Welcome back to the second hour of the Velocity of Now. I'm your host, Thomas Sheridan. We're on the Type 1 Radio Network. My website is www.thomassheridanarts.com. If you like what you hear tonight, you'll find more information on the website. If you'd like to keep me going so I don't have to go back to work in Mr. O'Brien's Sausage Factory, it'd be great if you could buy a book to help support me or throw me a few quid through the PayPal donate button. God bless you if you can do it. Anything that helps, and let's keep this conversation going. And to keep this conversation going, I have with me again tonight Adam from the Glasgow Truth Group. Now, Adam and I have been having some talks in the last few weeks, which we've tried to record, which we've tried to put on the air, but for some reason we've had like technical meltdown. I don't know whether we're being hacked or whether we're being attacked or whether we're being the demonic forces of Lichine House are after us. I don't know what's going on. But hopefully tonight, Adam and I can talk finally on the air about this incredibly important topic that I want you to all pay attention to and share with your friends about shills, distractions, moles, plants, and other ways they disrupt this alternative movement. Hi, Adam, are you there?
Hi, Thomas. I am here. Can you hear me?
Brilliant. Thanks for coming back, mate. I'm delighted to have you back here again.
It's a pleasure to be on.
Thank you. Now, let's talk about this. We had this conversation, and things went wrong, but it was kind of good in a way because you came up with some other things that you remembered you hadn't talked about. Tell me about your experience with plants, molds, or shills in this alternative movement.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, obviously, there are different types of infiltration. And in our previous conversations, which, as you said, failed to record properly, and, we don't know really what happened there, but it did feel definitely like an attack of some sort. But, we covered a whole bunch of different topics. But, I mean, in terms of actual, in the real world physical infiltration, I've had direct experiences and direct observations, which have taught me a lot about how these people and these systems work and what their aims are. And so I think that would be something that would be very interesting to talk about tonight, and something which, as you said before, a lot of people would, I think, need to pay attention to and need to really, really think about. And it also, in some ways, ties into what you were talking about earlier on, in terms of the use of magic and the use of spells to affect consciousness.
Exactly. Now, I have these problems too, but give me your own story first.
Sure. Well, I mean, as you're aware, and as some of the listeners may be aware, me and a colleague here in Glasgow run a sort of a fairly casual truth group. We call it the Glasgow Truth Group, and we have an open door policy. It's done through the meetup system, similar to the We Are Change groups, and so what we do is we have a forum, and people can join the forum, become members, and then we got to the point where we had enough members where we decided to have monthly meetings at the local pub. And we thought this was probably the best way to go about doing something like this, to start organizing in some way, shape, or form, to build a network, to start getting the word out there, to start exchanging ideas with other people, and to start talking about what we as a group and what we as individuals might be able to do to affect some kind of change, or to at least educate one another, and to at least improve each other's understanding of this system, of this agenda, and all of its inherent facets, of course. Now, the very first time we held one of our meetings, and this is going back to November of last year, we had a guy show up. Now, I'm not going to name names here for various reasons, but we had a guy show up. I mean, it's probably not his real name anyway, so it doesn't matter. But we had a guy show up who presented himself as being very friendly. He was quite casual. He was very approachable. He seemed like a nice guy. He started building rapport with all of the various group members. He started to sort of, basically try and become part of the group in terms of he tried to become our friend, basically. He tried to become friends with the people in the group and sort of work his way in, into our sort of little, into our, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Collective.
Yeah, and into our comfort zones. You know, so
Yeah.
he wanted to get to a point where we could trust him, and the way he did that was by mirroring people's personalities, and most especially my own personality. And one of the things that we recognized immediately, and one of the reasons why we identify them as being a shill or an agent, was the fact that he was mirroring my personality in such a way that nobody else could. He knew things about me that nobody else did. He would refer to things that I might have said in a private conversation maybe a year ago, and he would refer them word to word. He knew what my relationships had been like. He knew what I'd studied. I went after school when I went to like a tech, sort of private college, and he knew a lot of things about me, and so immediately I knew that this guy had access to my emails, my phone calls, my Skype conversations, all that stuff. And so we picked up on that pretty quickly, that this was not just another guy. This guy was something else. And as time went on, he continued to build rapport and to identify with people and to try and become as friendly and as trusted as possible. But the one thing that he kept on doing was trying to divert any kind of constructive conversation about, and this sort of ties back to our previous interview, any kind of constructive conversation that we might be having about any given issue, anything that can be proven, anything that you can put your finger on, everything that you can pinpoint and say, right, I can prove that, I can verify that. Let's get together and talk about this. Let's raise awareness. We're not big on protest necessarily, but raising awareness on issues that people can actually use in some productive form or another. Every time we would begin to coalesce and come together as a group and try and start talking constructively about these types of issues, what he would do is he would basically interject in some way, shape, or form. He would pretend to agree with us, pretend to know exactly what we were talking about, and oh yeah, I'm just like you guys. I have all the same concerns, blah blah blah. But then he would always end up steering the conversation off into speculation. And when I say speculation, I mean things like UFOs, aliens, paranormal stuff, anything that was basically speculative or unprovable, which again ties back to our previous interview. Anything. What he tried to do was take the conversation away from things that you could pin down, verify, and prove to things that you couldn't pin down, verify, or prove. And that is, that's classic counterintelligence.
Oh yeah. If you read the spy novels, like even the spy novels from from the 1950s, like the Riddles of the Sands, I think Cosgrove wrote that. I think his name was Erskine Childers, sorry. And that's all what it is. That's what all the infiltration is. To spin off the truth into the world of woo, or the world of patriotism. That's a big one I've noticed too here in Ireland. You have sort of clandestine Sinn Féiners, Republicans, who enter into groups similar to the ones you made, and the next thing they want to do is talk about what is to spin it off into Republican politics.
That's right. There's
always, they pick an angle in the area. So if they go into I'm not stereotyping your group in Glasgow, but suppose he went in there and there was a kind of a bunch of sort of new age, spiritual inclined people. Well, that's his target. They were. There you go. And that's his target. Flying saucers, aliens. He goes to another place where maybe their thing is green stuff, ecology, and then spin it off into like Earth Mother worship.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. I mean, the two main aims of counterintelligence are usually, in my experience and in my research, are either to channel the energy and the momentum that you've created as an individual or a group back into the same cause of the same agenda and the same system, so it could be used to further the same ends of the same control structure, or push you off into an unreal world, push you off into a twilight zone where you're not sure really quite what's real anymore. You're not really sure about how to go about, raising awareness. You basically end up, trying to convince people that the world is run by aliens, And as I admitted in the previous show, and I went through a brief period of my life where I was kind of sucked into that stuff. So, I'm speaking from first-hand experience here as someone who's been on both sides of the coin and has come through that tunnel and that can now look back at how I've been manipulated and then watch how the manipulation is done, as an observer.
And when they spin it off into the woo stuff, you know that you're on the right track because that's the one they fear the most. It's almost like you have in your hand a high-quality compass that's pointing perfectly to true magnetic north, and you know exactly where north is. And this infiltrator SHILL comes in and puts in your other hand a bag of magnets. That's right.
Yeah. And it's like you say, it's almost a spell. It's almost a form of sorcery, and as we were mentioning before, sorcery doesn't, or magic, or whatever you want to call it, doesn't necessarily have to be an evil or destructive thing. But what we are talking about here is essentially a manipulative form of sorcery, and this goes all the way back to, I mean, as far as I can see, at least, in my own research, goes all the way back to people like John Dee. Who was kind of like the first spy for the British Empire and was the first person to create a worldwide network of spies and infiltrators who would, report back to the Queen and the royalty about what other countries were doing, about what other leaders' intentions were, and in turn, who would go out there and disarm them or try counterintelligence tricks, if they felt threatened by anybody else, So this stuff, this is an ancient occult culture in a way, and what you'll find a lot of the time, and this was true in the case of the guy that has infiltrated our group, is that there is usually a history there. There's usually a military intelligence or law enforcement history there, as was the case with this particular individual. He'd come from a military family, and
or connection to. Sort of like stately home socialism.
Exactly. That's the other side of the story. That's the other kind of type of infiltration. I mean, because it depends on, the level of content that you're talking about and the type of approach you're taking to your group. But I mean, in some circumstances, as you've pointed out a number of times, in certain types of protests or certain types of gatherings or groups or whatever it may be, you'll have, as you said before, the stately home Cambridge socialist, and that stuff itself is almost a cult, which goes all the way back to, say, the 1930s and the beginning of the the big sort of elite socialist push.
The
people like the Fabians, exactly, the Fabians, people like Bertrand Russell, people like George Bernard Shaw, all these H.G. Wells, exactly, all these people from the early late 19th, the early 20th century. It goes all the way back to them as well. And so what you're almost talking about here is it's almost a cult. It's almost a cult of people who have been almost trained and bred, through, the classic elitist sort of Darwinist breeding programs that they have, to breed and train people who have got, or maybe not born with a particular skill set or born with a particular knack for this kind of work, but who will be trained from birth with specific views regarding the world and their purpose and their place in it. And this individual I'm referring to here, did definitely fitted the bill in that sense, because, well, for number one, he admitted that. I asked him, I said, where do you work? And he goes, I work at Special Branch. and if people don't know what Special Branch is basically the intelligence branch of the police. They're the department within the police that deal with intelligence, who would deal with infiltration, would deal with, gathering intelligence and putting out counterintelligence in order to maintain the status quo. And I said, oh, really? So you're a policeman then? And he said, oh, no, I'm just a janitor. I'm just a janitor at Special Branch, And immediately, for anyone to believe, that this guy was purely a janitor, he was well dressed, he looked like a cop through and through, You could tell he was fit. He'd been, doing regular training, and he was very well spoken, quite intelligent, very observant. You could tell he was making mental notes all the time. You could tell immediately, that this wasn't just some janitor from, that just happened to work at Special Branch, who had walked into our meeting and just happened to have an interest in UFOs. This was a guy who'd been sent in to build up trust, to build up rapport, and then to spin us off into nothingness, to spin us off into a kind of a twilight zone of division and of arguing and of speculation and of nonsense, so that we never had any power or any ability to change the status quo and to begin to affect any kind of positive influence or change in the society around us. And that is always well, not always, but in this context and in many other similar contexts, that is the aim of counterintelligence and infiltration.
And like all forms of magic, they even have their own version of sex magic. Mm-hmm. They have their honey traps, and they even have this appalling story that came out you could enlighten us on, where I have it on my website too, but you told the story really good last time, about the early ecology and green movement actually being targeted by undercover policemen who made activists fall in love with them.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, there was the famous case of Mark Kennedy, aka Mark Stone, a guy who was, I believe, a police detective. He was promoted into Special Branch, and he was told to infiltrate. I mean, it wasn't this long ago, actually. This was, I think, the late 90s from memory. Yeah. He was basically told to go and infiltrate this green movement who were doing protests outside, industrial polluters, and it's like today where we've got people protesting against fracking. It was the same kind of thing back then. He was told to go in there and become one of them. Become one of them. Identify.
Perfect job for a psychopath.
Perfect job for a psychopath. Become one of them. Be everything they want and need you to be. And he was so successful at this that he actually convinced one of the women involved in the group, and I believe she was probably, I think from memory, someone with a bit of influence, maybe one of the organizers or more senior members of the group.
Treasurer or something like that.
Something like it was something. I don't know the details. It was something like that. But he actually convinced her, through his manipulative techniques of coercion and of mirroring personalities and of all that other stuff, to actually fall in love with him, and they developed as far as she was concerned, a genuine relationship. She fell in love with the guy, and the guy had been lying to her for I think about 7 years about who he really was, what his real name was, and what his purpose was.
Yeah.
And this is just one of the cases horror story. This is just one of the cases that we know about, and this stuff is going on all the time. Yeah. And one of the things one of the things I credit Michael Moore for, and I don't give him a lot of credit, for a number of reasons, and that's another topic altogether. But one of the things I do credit him for is in his film Fahrenheit 9/11, he brought out, he at least exposed the fact that after the Patriot Act had been passed in the wake of September 11, the level of infiltration was to the point where people who, in the States, this is, for example, people who are like organizing baking clubs or cooking clubs or knitting clubs or whatever, completely harmless, just local groups, local neighbors getting together and sharing the common interests and being mates and having nice community experiences. Even that, he basically exposed that even those types of groups, were being infiltrated and spied upon. And the reason that they do that is not because they're worried about people who are doing knitting and cooking and baking and whatever. What they're doing is making sure that the conversation held in communities, between individuals, behind closed doors, in spaces that can't automatically be CCTV'd or recorded or observed, the conversation is kept within certain parameters. It's kept within the status quo. And his job, the infiltrator in this particular case, his job would have been to, if these people had started talking about, hey, politics and 9/11, and I don't think I like this Patriot Act, and I think we should start talking to people about it. His job would have been to, of course, sway them off course. His job would have been to disrupt them in whatever way he could, in whatever way was appropriate to their individual needs and desires. He would have used that against them, and basically, turned their efforts into mush.
Yeah. Now, I hate to be classist. I don't like classism going in either direction.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to talk about identifying these people. And to date, they seem to be very bad at hiding the fact that they come from either well-to-do families or they're paid, which we know they are, they're paid very high salaries. And it often shows in ways that they're not aware of and we're not aware of. But it's one of those markers you see. I often found one of the things I always noticed was, you know, shoes. I know this sounds silly, but shoes are one of the things that are still quite expensive. You know, lots of other things you can buy copies of that are like affordable to most people, but really good quality shoes are still not discounted. They're still expensive in stores, and they always seem to have very, very nice designer shoes. That was one of the things I always used to do. I'd look down and I'd see some guy with dreadlocks, whatever, and, you know, and a waistcoat and a pair of baggy jeans, and at the bottom a pair of really nice, well-made, expensive Italian moccasins.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, this was exposed quite well in some of the footage that was taken from the G8 and the G20 protests over the past couple of years in places like Toronto, and I think there was some other places in North America where they were holding the G8 and the G20s, and these, I'm sure people have seen the footage, and I'm sure you're aware of it as well. Where you would have these supposed anarchists come along to protest along with everybody else. They'd always be wearing masks, so you couldn't see their faces. Always, they'd be dressed, with the anarchist symbol kind of spray painted on a black T-shirt, and they'd be wearing kind of like camo pants and stuff like that. And but
very healthy and fit.
Yeah, but the shoes.
Only that fitness could have come from military or police training.
Exactly. There's that
having access to a regular gym. And
yep, exactly. And of course always short hair as well. Short hair.
Yeah.
I think
they have the hoodie pulled up over the hide.
Exactly. And as I said, this was exposed quite well, where you would see these guys, these supposed anarchists, coming into a peaceful protest to start throwing bricks and overturning police vans and setting fires and basically trying to make all the protest as a whole look like a bunch of idiots, so that anyone watching on television would just go whatever and discount the cause, which was the aim. But what was exposed was the fact that these supposed anarchists would go in be causing trouble, and one of them might get a bit of paint on their shoes or something like that, like a bit of orange paint, and then you'd see. Maybe a few hours later on, you'd see a line of policemen, like a blockade of policemen trying to prevent the protesters from getting past a certain point. And the policemen were wearing the very same shoes that had the same paint spilled on them, So, this exact what we're talking about here has been exposed, directly a number of times. And that's one of the most successful cases of infiltration exposure rather. It's very difficult otherwise. Without some kind of proof like that, it's very difficult. You've got to be a person who's able to who's able to use their intuition and to sort of connect the dots and to see and to feel that something isn't right, and to look at what's the underlying theme here? What is this person trying to achieve? What do they keep coming back to? What's the repetitive underlying or prominent or most prescient theme or concept that they keep coming back to, and whatever it is, and it will vary from group to group, as I said before, depending on who the people are, what they're protesting against, what their level of awareness is, the kind of content they're interested in, the personality types, but the main goal will always be the same, and that's, as I said before, to channel their energy back into the same causes, or to disrupt them to the point where they no longer become a threat. And that can be done in a myriad of ways, and I'm sure we can talk about some of those methods later on in the show. Yeah.
We can just let this is going great anyway, so just feel free to say whatever comes into your mind, because I think you've actually established a good, framework here for this conversation. So feel free to inject anything you want at any point. But one thing I just want to say that I often found interesting too, and it's happened to me as well, They're very specific about a certain place they want to take you. I've noticed that if the group doesn't have a formal meeting anywhere, say a meeting location, suppose they casually meet at events and demos and so on, they will specifically try to get people to move or attend a certain pub, restaurant, or cafe as a regular meeting place. And then they try to impose formal structures on them in there. So, for instance, for me, there's no reason why an anarchist or an alternative group needs to take minutes. Minutes belong in things like county councils and things like that, political parties. They'll start taking minutes. You don't need to take minutes. That's a control structure. That's, again, creating a framework. And I always remember years ago I was in Vienna, and there's a cafe in Vienna that had a statue on the front of Joseph Stalin, and it was where Stalin and Trotsky planned the Soviet Revolution. And this one cafe. But amazingly enough, at the same time in the 1920s, Adolf Hitler was in the same cafe planning National Socialism. So these cafe places were actually created as meeting houses in order to feed radicals with specific ideas and steer them off into certain agendas. That's another one I found, is they're always trying to move you to the nearest Labour club or something like that to actually get you into a place. Yeah.
I mean, again, it depends on the type of the group it is and what the group's aims are. But I mean, I think that sometimes some form of structure can be helpful if you're trying to affect a specific type of change or trying to push a particular type of cause. You almost need to have some basic form of structure in order to prevent the Shills and the Infiltrators from coming in.
Well, you do.
But this is going to be done very, 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 very carefully, because it's like the knife you mentioned before. That the structure and the rules or whatever mandate you might come up with could be used either to prevent the Shills and the Infiltrators from coming in, or it could be used to their own advantage.
But another reason that the Infiltrators use this is to test their behaviors, and it's almost like a Pavlovian conditioning to see how controlled he or she has the group. For example, if they're used to protesting on streets with megaphones and stuff, to see how well trained or how his authority status is actually working with the group, he may say, let's go down the road to the nearest McDonald's and do some protesting there. And he'll know exactly who impulsively follows him, who he actually has within the group.
That's right. And I've noticed this, directly in our group. He will take notes. You can see him taking mental notes. You can see him observing the types of topics that people talk about, and he'll select the people who he feels will be most susceptible to his game, his gig, his spiel. And he always does the same thing, which is he knows that some of us are onto him. He knows that there's at least 2 or 3 people who know exactly who he is and exactly what he's doing. But
and they'll be character assassinated.
That's something I'll get onto later on, but they'll definitely try and do that. The character assassination, I think generally that kind of stuff usually is more related to sort of like internet infiltration and subversion and stuff like that. But what this guy would do was, again, we come back to mirroring the personality, identifying with people, building rapport, building trust, and selecting the people who he felt were most vulnerable and most susceptible. Probably people who are who maybe in the earlier stages of their waking up process, and who weren't quite sure of what to believe and what not to believe. These people were prime targets, and so these were the people he would always pick and become friends with, and say, talk about how the aliens built the pyramids and blah 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 and all this other stuff. Basically to try and make sure that this person who would otherwise might start partaking in constructive discussion about something that could be, proved and verified and used in some constructive way, make sure that person became so confused or so sort of enraptured under the spell of his spiel that he was neutralized and disarmed.
Like a classic one of the fluoride is to always spin it off into the pineal gland.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that should be the least on the agenda when you're dealing with the general public. They try to bring that to the front. Yeah,
exactly. And another thing which they often do, and this is something that I'm glad that we're talking now and not last week, because I've neglected to mention it last week. something you brought up as well in one of your recent broadcasts was how they use the and this is a massive thing which is used right across the board is the whole drug cult, the whole sort of entheogens cult. The promotion of things like DMT, ayahuasca, other types of drugs. That constantly. And I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these drugs. If people want to go and try them, that's fine, but the promotion of the idea that these particular, so-called shamanic drugs are some kind of one-size-fits-all answer to the problem, and that all you need to do is a solution, and you can contact, the right entities and commune with them. They will give you advice, and knowledge and awareness will just come flooding into your brain through this pineal gland, and you don't really have to actually do any work or any critical thinking. You just have to take these drugs, and that's the kind of the solve-all, one-size-fits-all solution to the human predicament, and that's a very, very commonly promoted idea right across the board, and especially with certain infiltrators, depending on the type of group it is. And in our group, we experienced this as well, where the guy would basically, he got to the point where he was actually going around asking people whether they tried this, what they thought of this, and the people who were sort of more open to it, he'd say, well, why, can you get hold of some of this stuff for me, and
it worked so well for them in the 60s with LSD.
Yeah, the same thing.
They destroyed the whole Vietnam movement with LSD and flying saucer cults.
Exactly, same thing, all over again. Yep.
And what they're doing is they're saying, have you not got the answer yet? Well, no. Well, go to the next level. Keep going, until eventually you go into cognitive decay and madness sets in.
And I've seen it, and unfortunately, with maybe one or two people, he's been quite successful in doing that,
Yeah.
And he was literally going around taking phone numbers, saying, right, getting a list, and the contact details of those people who would be susceptible, open, or otherwise interested in taking entheogens or drugs, rather than meeting up and having a constructive, sober, critical discussion. And it got to the point where, we began to sort of, at least those few of us who could recognize what was going on, tried to sort of start fighting back a little bit and start to question him and basically sort of counter some of the stuff that he was trying to promote. And, being a professional, of course, once he realized that, at least a few of us were onto him, he backed off.
Yeah, well, I'm very suspicious. I'm very suspicious about the whole psychedelic thing now.
Yeah.
I've taken psychedelics and everything, but I always say to people, when I'm dealing with psychopaths, I want all my faculties and critical thinking intact.
Exactly.
Because that's the only way I can actually take them on. But now, since this new information that came out about Terence McKenna that Mark Passio showed that, there he was basically indirectly saying some very deep things. It ties in perfectly with, Huxley and Brave New World and Soma and the chemical concentration camp and the chemical servitude. And now, I don't know. I'm just really starting to question everything from this idea of the spirit molecule. And now watching that movie, I want to know who's in it. Who's giving me this information? Why is it being shoved in my face as some kind of cancer? And I'm not saying that, people are involved in everything to do with psychedelics or entheogens. They're all bad people who are trying to turn us into a bunch of dribbling half-wits, out of this reality. But we do have to now be very, very careful.
Yeah, no, you do, and it's like you said before. There's absolutely nothing wrong with if an individual makes a conscious decision that they're going to go and have one of these drug experiences for whatever reason they might want to do. That's fine. I've got nothing against that.
Yeah, but a lot from them.
Yeah, exactly, and I'm totally open to the idea that these can improve your own consciousness and awareness and levels of reason and whatever.
For creativity for art.
Well, especially for art and creativity, yeah. But it's like in our previous interview, never the twain shall meet. Well,
Paul McCartney, there's a time to stop.
Yeah.
And he should have stopped before he wrote, Obla Di Obla Da. He's a classic example of someone you do lose your edge if you go too much on them.
That's right, and that's what they're trying to do. And unfortunately, even though we got to the point in this particular situation in our group where we made him aware that we knew what he was doing, indirectly, because we knew that if we tried to expose him publicly, probably 80% of the group members would turn against us instead because, oh, he's such a nice guy and he's just, all he wants to, and he would deliver such fascinating anecdotal stories.
And throw in sob stories like
and sob stories,
he was raised in an orphanage or something.
All this kind of stuff. Any trick in the book, any trick in the book.
His wife was screwed around with his brother, that kind of thing.
Works, name it, and he would do it to the point where he would contradict himself, and that was another big red flag. And one of the other reasons why we were able to identify who and what he was so quickly was because his background story, his manufactured identity and life story didn't add up. There were contradictions in it constantly. But anyway, I mean, he did get to the point where, he realized that a few of us were onto him. And at that point, he backed right off. And he still kept on turning up. But what he would do is he would just sort of take a back seat. He would just sit there. He'd observe. He'd watch the kinds of stuff we were talking about. And he would try to gauge, right, who's onto me here? Who's figured this out? Who's suspicious?
So it became old-fashioned espionage.
Yeah, old-fashioned. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He would, who's onto me, who's not, who's going to be my next target. What options have I got here in terms of trying to create division or confusion within the group? How can I get around these problems? And also, just taking mental notes in terms of, right, most of the group seem to be interested in talking about this kind of stuff. Therefore, I'll go back and I'll research a bit more of this. So next time I can turn up and I can sound like I know what I'm talking about. And that leads me on to another thing, which was another one of the ways we recognized who and what he was so quickly was the fact that he was able to deliver very, very eloquent and fascinating, sensationalist stories about UFO experiences and aliens and all kinds of esoteric paranormal phenomena. But when it actually came to the more basic, provable, verifiable, documentable stuff that we've been talking about in the last two interviews, he was not able to portray or sort of prove that he was actually that he actually knew what he was talking about at all in regards to any of these subjects. He hadn't done the proper amount of research that he needed to convince us that he was really, really interested in all of these subjects. He wasn't able to do that because all he had done was simply gone to the the 10 most popular UFO sites, taken down a few keywords and just started, spouting bullshit, And when you actually question him about something like, say, Agenda 21 or transhumanists or something like that, he would basically, he didn't know what to say. He'd go quiet. He'd back off and he'd just sort of, and he'd change the subject back onto UFOs and a kind of more of a sly way. And so, yeah, this is just another one of the many, many red flags that people can look out for if they're in a similar situation. For example, like we were trying to create some kind of group or some kind of movement, some kind of collective experience where a number of people get together to try and do something with this information in some way, shape, or form. This is another one of the red flags that people can look out for, and there's so many of them. And we'd really need 2 hours to go through them all. But in terms of physical infiltration, this is what you're looking for. You're looking for someone who comes in who doesn't feel right, who doesn't look quite right, who's a bit too well dressed, who usually, as he says, has shoes that are a little bit beyond his budget, supposedly.
A few years older. If the average age group is 29, he'll be like 35.
Exactly. I mean, I think the average age in our group was probably somewhere around between. I was probably one of the younger guys there, but the average age is probably about 35 to 45, and he would, let's say 30 to 40, he would be maybe 45, 50, just a wee bit older, and in turn, with that seniority, he's automatically got a little bit more respect,
He's the father figure.
Yeah, he's the father figure, and also the fact that because he's supposedly a janitor at Special Branch, he's got all these amazing tidbits of information that he's overheard people talking about,
Yeah.
Oh, wow, I was in work the other day mopping the floors and cleaning the toilets, and I overheard these two policemen talking about how the whole war on terror is fake, as if that was his big way to impress us. And wow, this he's like our link to the inside, he's going to be able to give us inside information, he's a fly on the wall on the inside of the system. Wow,
I often thought that, what was that movie back in the 90s, Good Will Hunting, where Matt Damon played the janitor, it was almost created to make you think the janitors were possessors of brilliant secrets or something.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if that was part of the agenda too.
Well, I think part of the agenda also was when he said janitor, he was speaking figuratively as well. He was also giving us a message, and he was. And
oh yeah, but they're laughing at us too.
It was a piss take. Basically, when he said that he was a janitor at Special Branch, what he was saying in a sort of allegorical, metaphorical way, whichever fits, he was saying, I'm the guy at Special Branch that has to deal with all the shite. I'm the guy that has to mop up the crap. Like the little annoying groups like you guys that pop up, whilst my buddies are off, infiltrating supposed terrorist groups or doing, high-level espionage overseas or whatever.
Carrying guns.
Oh, yeah, carrying guns, all that kind of stuff, and with, being basically, living the James Bond lifestyle or whatever it may be, he's the guy that's got to, go down to the local pub and deal with a bunch of sort of young people, talking about, issues that, the establishment finds very annoying and sometimes quite concerning, So I think that was a figurative piss take there, and they love doing that. They love doing that, and I've seen the guy smiling and smirking sometimes when he's done that. He can't help it.
The Dooper's delight, the rush of adrenaline, the adrenaline.
Yeah, he's such a psychopath that he can't help but laugh and smirk and smile when he makes some of these comments,
In the 15 minutes that we have left, let's talk about the internet version of this in terms of character assassinations and so on.
Sure, yeah. Well, I can give you another story. This was prior to the physical infiltration that started up, and I believe, at least anyway, that these two phenomena, or at least these two sets of experiences, were linked in some way, because they were trying. I'll get to that later on. But anyway, I was on a particular forum that I used to frequent some years ago. That is very, very well known for talking about a lot of this esoteric type stuff, to do with UFOs, the paranormal, and top secret government military programs, with aliens and all that rubbish, And I'm sure most people out there probably got a pretty good idea of what website I'm talking about and which forum I'm referring to here. No, and it's not David Icke, by the way. What happened was that I had begun to come out of this tunnel of kind of delusion and illusion and uncertainty and confusion regarding the whole UFO.
The early waking up mess.
Yeah, exactly. I'd finally had started moving beyond that and realizing that I'd been conned, and this was just another level of deception. And that I've been subjected to predictive programming my whole life because, I probably should have said this in the previous interview. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I love science fiction, and if there were alien civilizations out there that were kind of like us and that we could meet them and we could exchange knowledge about the universe, I would love that. But it's fiction. It's fiction. Yep. And that was the point we were trying to make last time. Anyway, so I was basically on a forum having this kind of, having these huge revelations about what had been done through predictive programming and how people were being led along through this kind of like, as you put it the other time we spoke, this kind of esoteric sort of porn, where you're just given, it's like an ongoing sci-fi drama where you're just given enough to keep you, to make you tune back in next time. You're never given the final proof. You're never given anything that you can actually use. You're just given enough to excite you, to titillate you, and to make you want to come back for more. And it just goes forever.
Waiting for the esoteric money shot that never happened.
Waiting for that's exactly it. The esoteric money shot that never comes.
Which exactly is the same technique that comes out of things like doomsday cults and religious, the rapture or the event that's coming.
It's all the same stuff. It's all the same stuff.
All the same stuff, yeah.
All the same techniques. Anyway, so I'd been going through my own personal awakening experience, or second level of awakening, shall we say, and I'd begun to realize, that I'd been conned and duped, and it was kind of painful for me on some levels, although it was very, very empowering on another, and I was very, very happy that I'd gone through this, and I decided that I needed to communicate this information with as many people as possible. And on this particular forum, there were a lot of people who really had believed in a lot of this stuff and were still stuck in that box, or that Twilight Zone trap of not being able to differentiate between fantasy and reality, And I started to communicate my ideas and talk about how counterintelligence works, both, in physical terms and in virtual, digital, online terms, talking about the techniques that we used. I was referencing actual military programs that organizations like DARPA, the CIA, and the FBI would actually use, the techniques they would use, the purpose, the reason for why they would do these things. And, not to sort of, blow my own trumpet, but, I think I managed to do it in a fairly eloquent way, in a way that people would understand and that people would get and that people would appreciate. And it turned out that that was the case, because I started receiving messages of support from people saying, wow, you've really opened my eyes here. I realized I've been conned again. This is fantastic. Keep it up. And, people were very supportive of me. And as soon as the positive impact became apparent, immediately some guy joined the forum and just started attacking me from every angle possible, every possible way, every form of character assassination you can imagine. I mean, the first thing he said was that I was a counterintelligence agent, and that I was trying to, disprove or get people to sort of doubt the alien agenda, and that that I was just another one of these people out there who was just an idiot who was too close-minded to accept the truth of the alien agenda, and all this kind of stuff and all this kind of nonsense. But anyway, he did a fantastic job of basically just dividing people and confusing them. And this eventually turned into the point, and in terms of dealing with the methods and the methodologies rather of online infiltration. It's quite different to the way it works in the real world. It's kind of hit and run. When you actually confront people online and try and engage them in a logical, rational argument, they are unable to do it.
Yeah, a grenade of bullshit is thrown in. That happened to me recently. I was on an Irish political group. This is a mainstream group. But I often throw things in there to gauge how the shift is happening in mainstream society.
Yeah.
And I started a thread about Obama, and I said to Saudi, do you still think he's wonderful? And the majority, I'd say 90% of the group, of the people on the group, said, you're absolutely right. Obama's turned out to be an absolute Bush Part 2 catastrophe.
Yeah.
Some were saying things like, yeah, I fell for his bullshit. And then this guy interjects about halfway through the thread, and he quotes me, and then he puts down, well, congratulations for, refraining from what you really wanted to do and bring up the color of his skin.
Yeah, right.
Oh, so it was so simple. What happens then was somebody jumps in and saying, well, this is not really relevant to this discussion. And then the other guy, the guy who made that comment, said, well, obviously it is. This guy has a problem with Obama because he's black. And the next thing you know was it had nothing to do with racism. It's suddenly thrown off into that world. And I didn't bother getting involved because I know from my no contact ever again that I'm not going to spend time defending my humanity because it just kills the point. But it's little things like that they'll throw out. As I was saying, that they throw in that grenade of bullshit where you end up having to defend either your intellect or your humanity or your integrity as a human being.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's a big giveaway of an intelligence agency funded organization. One that either say they run a website and the website is supposed to be alternative information, alternative news, and they fill it with little bit of kind of science fiction bullshit that's supposed to be real life, coupled with using their website to run assassination campaigns on other people in the movement. It's a surefire giveaway. A normal website that deals in alternative news would never run assassinations on other people in the movement.
No.
Not on an industrial scale like one particular notorious group does.
Yeah. And again, there's so many different ways they can use this, but in terms of online character assassination and online counterintelligence. But I mean, obviously, again, the aims are always the same, although it's less effective online because they work in hit and run tactics. They work in hit and run techniques. As soon as you engage them and you actually in a rational and logical debate, they can't. There's no way they can counter that. And
if you say nothing, it's dead. They've lost.
Yeah, exactly.
Say nothing, and also, and if they continue the attack, what happens is the eyes start looking at them.
Exactly, and that's
stupid ones continue the attack. They don't learn how to shut up, so the
yeah.
eyes start looking at them.
That's right. Yeah. And I mean, this whole thing eventually just came. It wound down to the close. I mean, it got to the point where I mean, I was receiving sort of threatening phone calls and stuff like that, to try and scare me away and all the rest of the usual tactics they use to try and freak you out and to try and make you think that you've crossed the line and then you're gonna die or whatever. Sorry.
Or you're going nuts.
No, you're going nuts, exactly. All this kind of stuff, every trick in the book, and I eventually just got to the point where I said, well, fine, I'll use my energy elsewhere. You haven't won. You've just made me realize that, the group that I was trying to talk to was a bit of a mess. And I actually have a strong suspicion that the actual owners or the moderators of the forum may have been behind this, because they make a lot of money out of getting people to believe in this kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And setting up the conferences and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and I was expecting that,
Somebody had told me recently that if someone had produced, if someone was to produce, say, a conference of, say, the more kind of prosaic, shall we use that word, people in this movement, like, say myself, I'm not the boast, but you know what I mean, someone like Alan Watt, and a few other people, Mark Passio, and a few other people who have really interesting things to say, it would not be as well attended as if somebody was starting to talk about aliens, spacemen.
Well, that's the thing.
Extension. And the woman was telling me that she lives in a small town somewhere in America, and somebody locally had put on some kind of UFO conspiracy event, and she'd never seen the car parks and the parking in this town so full before. They came from everywhere.
You know why that is? You know why that is? And it ties right back into the previous conversation we had a couple of weeks ago. It is much, much easier and more comfortable for people to
believe in something that can't be proven.
Believe in something that can't be proven, and because it doesn't force you to actually take a stance on anything or to really look at yourself. To examine your own psyche, to look at how you've been conned, to look at your own life, your own convictions, to make some decisions about what you're going to do, to make some hard decisions about, where you're going with your life and what you're subscribing to and who you're going to listen to and all that type of stuff. When it comes to aliens, UFOs, you don't have to do any of that. All you have to do is sit back and be entertained, and people will pay through the nose for that. And so I tend to believe that, even the people who are running these sites are probably, in part at least responsible for some of the online attacks that happen, and maybe even responsible for some of the physical infiltration that goes on, because it is an industry. It is a very successful.
It really is esoteric porn too. It's like, it's like a fella who doesn't want a relationship with a regular woman. Yeah. He wants Playboy on videos.
He wants a different form of titillation every week.
Yeah. And an imagination and a fantasy of being someone they're not.
It's basically it's the equivalent. It's the difference between wanting truth and always seeking truth and always questioning your own convictions and your own ideologies versus wanting to tune into the latest sci-fi drama on a weekly basis. That's what it comes down to, and they know that, and that's why it works, and that's why, as you said, the car park was the most full it had ever been, and that's why the infiltrators work this way, and that's why, when most people go online looking for some kind of truth or some kind of alternative answer, the first thing they'll see is UFOs, aliens, and all the rest of it.
Well, thanks very much, Adam, for coming on again. It's been absolutely fantastic. Anything you want to throw in the last minute? I'd probably just, encourage people to be vigilant, and I don't mean paranoia. I don't mean pointing the finger at anyone who has been... I don't mean pointing the finger at anybody who may have been interested or may still have an interest in some of these things, because I think it's fine to be interested and curious in these things, like we talked about in our last show. But be vigilant. Drugs are not the answer to the human predicament. Aliens are not the answer to the human predicament. Critical thought and the analysis of one's own individual psyche and the empowerment of one's own individual psyche is the answer, not this kind of stuff. So people have got to be very, very vigilant about this kind of stuff, and look for those red flags we've pointed out. And perhaps one day we can further this discussion and go even deeper, because there's so much more to say. Well, preach, brother. I couldn't add any more to that. We're singing from the same hymn sheet. And thanks again. Oh, you'll definitely be back, because these are important discussions, and these are, I think, what you and I have to talk about should be put out there more often. So thanks again, Adam, and I'll see you next time I have you on.
It was a pleasure, Thomas. I'll speak to you soon.
Take care.
Take care.
So this has been another 2 hours that just flew by. I hope you enjoyed it. This is The Velocity of Now. I'm Thomas Sheridan. It's the 29th of September, 2013, and I'll be on JP's show tonight at 11 p.m. GMT. It's called Wolf Spirit Radio, and you've been listening to The Velocity of Now, the show dedicated to people who can see the world as it really is and not how they are told it is. Good night, look after yourself, and I'll see you next week for episode 13 of The Velocity of Now here on Type 1 Radio. ThomasSheridanArts.com. And we're going to win!